You're listening to the Joe and Rosa Show, proclaiming the gospel through word and through song.
Hi, and welcome to the Joe and Rosa Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Rosa.
And with us today, we have author Jennifer Dukes-Lee. She wrote the book, The Happiness Dare. It looks like a pretty good book there. How you doing, Jennifer?
I'm doing great. Very happy to be here.
Thank you.
I took your happiness assessment online about 10 minutes ago. Apparently, I'm a giver. What does that mean?
Oh, how exciting, givers. Oh, this is wonderful. We have 5 different happiness types, and anybody can take that test over at thehappinessdare.com. But givers find their happiness sweet spot primarily by seeking ways to bring delight to others. They believe that shared happiness is like a double happiness, that when you give your happiness away to someone else, you don't lose your happiness. You gain happiness, not only for yourself, but you double it because you're giving it to someone else. I love the heart of the giver.
Wow, that's awesome. So I get to be a giver. What are you, Rosa?
Mine was thinker with doer just underneath that.
Oh, wow. What a great combination. Thinkers, yeah. Thinkers are these people who are just the noticers and the daydreamers. They ask really good questions. They have these beautiful minds, and sometimes people think that thinkers are just sort of off in their own world. But what they're really doing is taking delight in learning and pondering and dreaming. And I really think that thinkers, of all of the 5 of the happiness types, they believe that the secret to happiness is to have the mind of Christ. And they understand that the quality of their thought life is proportional to the depth of their happiness. Really good thoughts, like having good thoughts will make us a happier person. And I'll bet, Rosa, that you love to wonder and that you need space every day and time every day to contemplate. I'm guessing you have a lot of books.
I do.
And I'm guessing you love to learn something new every day. Am
Absolutely,
I right?
Absolutely. It's like you know me already.
So Rosa's the thinker, I'm the stinker.
Yeah, right. And so, at the happiness, I messed that up. It's at thehappinessdare.com that we did that, right? So I'll start over again.
That is correct. You find the test, and you can take that test in 5 minutes or less and find out what your happiness style is. You can really find out what makes you truly happy. It has been so affirming for women and men alike to find that they have a style, that their style of happiness doesn't make them weird, it makes them wonderful. There's just so much to learn about our happiness styles, and there's 5 different styles. There's givers, thinkers, experiencers, relators, and doers. And it's been so fun to see people feel affirmed in their style. You know, like, let's say that there's a block party tonight in your neighborhood, and all the relators want to go to the block party, and you're thinking, how come I don't really want to go to the block party? I'm not really into block parties. Well, maybe that's because you're a thinker, and you find a lot of happiness watching a documentary tonight on TV. Or maybe you're an experiencer, and you think it would be pretty cool to just go for a walk around the lake and watch the sunset. Or get this, a doer might actually prefer to weed the garden or complete some task at home. Like, you could actually get happiness out of fulfilling purpose, doing purposeful things. And a giver might prefer tonight to go serve soup at the homeless shelter or to do something that everybody else wants to do. So I think that test really gives people affirmation that who they are is how God wired them. It's been a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And so for our listeners, again, you can take that assessment at thehappinessdare.com. And so I want to ask you also, this ties in a little bit as you were talking about our purpose that God has for us and wiring us a certain way, that when it comes to the subject of happiness, a lot of people aren't even sure or aware of the fact that God would even care about our happiness. So what would you say to that if our listeners are questioning as to whether or not God cares about our happiness, or does he only care about our holiness? So, and what's the difference between joy and happiness? Is God happy? All that sort of thing, if you would answer that for us, please.
Absolutely. Such a common question. And really, to be honest, that's where this journey started for me. I was like, God, I want to be happy, but it's something that I'm just kind of whispering about. I'm just going to be honest with you, God. I want to be happy. I want happy kids. I want a happy marriage. I want a happy life. But do you even care? Because, you know, just a couple years ago, I had a pin on one of my pin boards on Pinterest, and it says, God cares more about your holiness than your happiness. And I think that is really common. We've created this dichotomy between holiness and happiness that is really quite unhealthy. When in fact, what I learned after I took this happiness dare from God was that holiness and happiness are intertwined, that my holiness is tied to my happiness both in God and the salvation I have through Jesus Christ, but also my happiness is tied to the created gifts that he gives us in this world. Everything from the family that he has given me to help raise, from the view outside my kitchen window, from the taste of wonderful food, to the beauties of music and the glorious nature of bookshelves and books, and so much to wonder and enjoy in this world. So many things that he has given us to really be happy about. But somewhere along the line, over about the last 100 to maybe 200 years, there has been this division created between both holiness and happiness, and also between happiness and joy. Now, Scripture doesn't make those kinds of distinctions. That's something that we've come up with on our own. And when we look back at theologians from 100 years or more, they aren't making those kinds of distinctions at all. Now, I understand that there really is a difference between joy and happiness. A person can have the joy of the Lord even on a day when they're not happy. But I think the danger comes when we make happiness out to be the evil cousin of joy. I would argue that happiness is the outward expression of an inward joy that we have in Jesus. And I think that if you have to dig a mile deep to find someone's smile, is that really the joy of the Lord? I think that God is calling us to live happier lives. I think he is calling us to delight in the things of this world, to delight in him and all that he has given us to enjoy right here on earth, right now. And I know that I don't want to miss it. I want to enjoy this life that I've been given.
Absolutely. I love that. And so, Joe, you wanted to...
Well, I was going to ask you about, in your book, you mentioned one of the biggest things that gets in the way of our happiness is comparisons. And I've found that to be true in my life. The best way to ruin a good thing is to compare what you're doing to what the next person is doing. I really like that you mentioned that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that so often we compare our lives to others. And when we do that, there's a verse, and Paul wrote it, and it says that that means we will not compare ourselves with each other as if one of us were better and another worse. We have far more interesting things to do with our lives. But we have this tendency to think that happiness lies in the life of someone else, that if I were more like him or I were more like her, then I would be happier. But the fact is, God has given us everything we need within ourselves by the power of the Holy Spirit to have happiness in our lives. And I think that finding our happiness style really helps that. And I also think that just looking at our lives and finding contentment with the gifts that we have been given is a great way to experience true happiness. Let me give you an example. Are you guys watching the Olympics?
Yes.
Okay. So in the Olympics, there's, the gold medal winners, the silver, and the bronze. And a few years ago, researchers discovered that Olympic bronze medalists were actually happier than the silver medalists. And the reason is because silver medalists were more inclined to compare themselves to the gold medal winners. They didn't get the gold. But bronze medalists were just happy they got a medal. Mm-hmm. And so it just shows that if we live kind of like bronze medalists, like we're happy that we're here. We're happy that we get to be on earth. Instead of being like a silver medalist, always looking and gunning for the gold and wishing for something more, there is a great lesson there among those medalists for us in finding happiness in the lives that we have right now.
Wow, I think that is a powerful illustration. I absolutely love that. And so let's talk about the happiness dare. That's what the book is called, the happiness dare. So what is a happiness dare, and what happened when you took that dare?
Okay. Yeah, the dare actually was a God-made dare. It came from the Lord about 2 years ago, and it came in response to a prayer I had prayed. It was like, God, do you care if I'm happy? Is it okay for a woman who loves Jesus to desire happiness? Should I only want joy? And do I even ask for happiness when I have 1,000 reasons to be happy already? Happiness just felt selfish. And I thought, did I just really pray that to God? But instead of like striking me down or punishing me for asking about happiness, I really felt like he set me out on this dare to find out how important happiness was to him. And one of the images that came to my mind in response to that question was he brought back a memory of a time when I was probably the happiest in my life. And it was after a spiritual revival that I had attended. My faith was so renewed, and I had never felt so much happiness. It was this happiness that was beyond a Bible camp effect. It was something that kept steady for really a lot of years. And it reminded me with that memory that my happiness was tied directly to my holiness. It wasn't something apart from holiness. It was a part of holiness. This time when I felt closest to God, fully renewed in my faith, gave me such a great desire for him and for happiness. And it also reminded me that my circumstances didn't change. I had hard things going on in my life before I went to that retreat. When I came back, the circumstances were the same. But what was changing was me. And that memory reminded me that the closer I got to God and the more I sought happiness in him, the more I felt happiness in my everyday life. So I took that dare and I began to do little things every day, 5 minutes a day, little things to boost my happiness. My family started doing the same, and we're like, this works. This really works. We began to study about happiness, read about happiness in scriptures. I read all kinds of research about happiness, and eventually I looked at all this, and I thought, I can't keep this to myself. This dare is not for me alone. This dare made a difference in my life, and so I extended that dare to people around the world with the happiness dare.
I really like that idea, that taking a dare to be happier. And I saw in there you have this, what's it called, the principle of small daily gains, and that kind of catches my attention. I've always been into fitness, and in athletics, unless you're cheating or taking something you shouldn't, you always make little gains at a time, and I guess happiness is the same way. You move forward a little at a time.
That is exactly it. I love that analogy. You know, with the principle of small daily gains, what we're believing is this, that little by little, we can become happier by changing the way we think, by really building those spiritual muscles. So many people believe this is just the way I am. So using your athletic analogy as an example, I am not an athlete. I am not a runner. But I was challenged by my sister-in-law to run a half marathon with her several years ago. And I could have said, this is just the way I am, because at that point in my life, I couldn't even run down to the mailbox at the end of our driveway and back without being completely out of breath. But I applied the principle of small daily gains. The first day, I ran to the mailbox. The next day, a little bit farther. Took some breaks as needed between days. Pretty soon, I was running 2 to 3 miles a day. And then one May morning, I ran 13 miles in that half marathon. And so little by little, I was able to run. And little by little, we can become happier by changing the way we think. Little things, little exercises mentally and soulfully that we can do to change who we are and bring more happiness into our lives. They don't have to be huge things. We don't need brain transplants here to become happier. There are little things that we can do every day to boost our happiness.
So going along with that question, you basically say that 5 minutes a day, if you'll invest that towards happiness, that can help to boost your mood. Could you give us some examples of that?
That's all the time we have this week. We encourage you to join us next week when we finish our interview with Jennifer Dukes-Lee. And you can find Rosa's blog on lifeinsidethehouseontherock.com. And thank you for joining us.